Hi, welcome to the HSP Connection. This is a mini-series of the Meeting of Minds podcast with me, Philippa Robinson.
And me, Robbie Lee. In this series, we're looking at all things HSP, from our own personal experiences of discovering our HSPs, to working out what we need to thrive as HSPs, and also in working in our businesses as HSP coaches and speakers. This series has something for everyone because what's good for HSPs are good for the world. If you want to know more about what it means to be an HSP, take a look at take a listen at our first episode 90 of the Meeting of Minds podcast, and we talk all about it. So let's get into what we're talking about today, Philippa, which is,
well, it's all about finding our rhythm, figuring out what we need, and the consequences of kind of going against what we need.
All right. Yes, meaty topic.
Yeah, well, they're all meaty, aren't they? But this one is it ties in a little bit with the previous one that we did on self-care. We're not going to go into specifics, but we are going to talk more around how do we work out what we need. We've both been through that, haven't we?
Absolutely.
Would you like to talk a little bit about how you figured out what you needed?
Oh man. Yes. Well, first of all, I want to say it's been a journey. It wasn't just a one-time discovery. I think I've been on this journey my whole life, honestly, trying to constantly work out what it is that I need, what would be helpful for me, how can I grow? And sadly, some of the times that I learned the most was through pain. So it's like, when it wasn't working, and so for me, a lot of that message has been my physical health. So if I wasn't well in my body, that has really pushed me to figure out, okay, well, what do I need? What do I need in order to be as well as I can be, and in order to function, in order to give back? Because I think, I shared with you before, like I had a physical, I was ill for so long, like for almost a year, I was mostly just in bed. And that's just not a life that was fun for me, or fulfilling at all. So that negative stimulus can force change. And yeah, I'm feeling a little discombobulated, and I don't know what happened, but I'm gonna hand the mic back to you, and then I'll bounce back.
No. That's you're probably remembering everything that you've been through, and you did share that with us in the episode where you came on as a guest rather than now where you're co-hosting with me, and that was episode 82. So not that you can't repeat it, of course you can, but if anybody wants to know more about Robbie and Robbie's journey with her health, she talks about that really openly and much more in episode 82. For me, my working out what I needed came very much on the back of my therapy. And I've talked before how I ended up discovering I was highly sensitive after I'd done a lot of therapy around my childhood stuff. It's always childhood, isn't it? And I remember, for me, everything that I did going to therapy and the work that I did after therapy, the self-coaching, I didn't know that's what I was doing at the time, but everything I was learning and working on myself, with myself, all of that was very much came from a place of me that was like, well, the way I've been living up until now has really not served me. My life is pretty miserable at the moment. I've just got to do something different. And I've got nothing to lose really, because everything was crumbling around my, around my feet. My job was going to pot, my relationship, me and my husband were really not getting on very well. I felt like I was a nightmare to live with. So everything had gone wrong. So I kind of felt like I had nothing to lose. And what really, I think I've shared this before, I came across Brené Brown. Somebody introduced me to Brené Brown, the great Brené Brown, and I watched her TED talk on vulnerability. And in that, she is talking about a different way of being. Instead of putting a mask on and pretending everything's okay, and really striving to be what I thought I should be. I'm doing bunny ears around the should, which is not very helpful for if you're listening on audio. And instead of doing that, how could I be? There is a different way, and the other way is to actually be more honest, be vulnerable, and admit to people. Granted, you've got to pick who those people are, but admit to people that you're struggling, that you're finding it hard. And part of that for me was admitting that I was miserable, that I was really frustrated at doing everything for everybody and doing nothing for myself. Once I'd realized that doing something for yourself was a thing.
Yes.
So for me, it was very much, I got to try something different, because what has got me to here is no longer working. So, and a lot of the behaviors that I had adopted and adapted to, had worked, because they'd got me to my late 40s. I was alive, I had a husband, I've got a family, on the face of it, I had nearly, everything that society tells me that I should want. So they had worked to some extent, but they were not working anymore, mainly actually, because I realized I'd arrived at this space that society had told me should make me happy, and that I'd done everything, more bunny ears, right. And I was thoroughly miserable.
Oh my gosh. You said so many important things there. I thought it was so palpable when you said, like, just admitting that to yourself, like you had to admit that to yourself. I think a lot of people are going to be able to relate to that. Like we go through life getting all these messages of here's my bunny ears, here's what you should do. Here's what you should strive for. Here's what will make you happy. You do all the things, you're not happy. You have to admit to yourself you're not happy. And now what? Holy cow. That can be terrifying.
It can. The now what?
Yes.
The now what can be really terrifying, because it's so new. It's unknown. Yes. It's really is uncharted territory. And it was being in that situation, and really having nothing to lose, that I think gave me the space to start figuring out what I needed.
I can really relate to that sentiment of nothing else to lose. It's just like, might as well go all in, because what is here now is awful. So let's just throw all we can at a new thing. Let's try it.
Yeah. And if anybody's listening to this and they're recognizing they've been in that place, or they are in that place, I mean, I hope this is not triggering, hearing us talking about it, but also I hope this is going to give you hope, because we are both through that. That's not to say we don't dip down, and it's not a linear journey, and life itself is a series of ups and downs.
Yes.
But my experience has definitely been that after the first massive big dip that I stayed in for quite a few months, I have never been so low again, and certainly not for anywhere, so not as low, and even if I have dipped low, it's not been for as long. That's my experience. I'm lucky that is my experience. But figuring out our rhythm, and with that, we're both women, and we obviously have menstrual cycles, and there's all sorts of rhythms that we could be talking about, just the rhythm of life generally. It's not the Lion King, I won't sing. So not, but also the rhythm of who we are, and what we're about, what we need, what we want to do, what brings us joy, what what's important to us, and all of those things. So it's kind of, I mean, maybe it sounds a bit like quite a big task, but I get quite excited about it now. I think that's like really, really fun to work out all these things about ourselves. And frankly, who wants to get to, like I did, 47 and feel like you know it all? I mean, there's a lot of life left to be discovering.
Absolutely. Yes.
Discovering things. And, I discover new things about myself all the time.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like you, it's joyful. It's joyous for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's true because I have come to love and accept myself for who I am, and recognize that my needs are important. Right?
Oh, and that's such a big thing, isn't it? That self-worth piece.
Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh. That's been life-changing for me, is learning how to love myself and treat myself with love, And it's opened up a new way of looking at the world. It's adjusted my lenses on. I walked through the world being very outward focused. What do you need? What do you need? How can I help you? How can I make this better for this person? I'm just a very giving person by nature. But what I never did was consider that what I needed is just as important. I for almost 50 years, I walked around thinking, like, just not getting that what I needed was just as important. And honestly, maybe even more important, because it's like the oxygen mask on yourself first, right? It's like, I'm the only one here in my body and responsible for me and taking care of me. Like, I taking care of my needs, figuring them out, and then giving them to me, and giving myself the permission to say, what I need is important. It's valid.
It is
Valid. Yeah.
In true HSP style, I was welling up then.
Yeah. Yes.
I was having a real moment with what you were saying. It is so important, and you've said so many really beautiful things there. And it reminds me of a saying that I heard actually just the other day, and I know I've said it in the past, not necessarily on the podcast, but you are the only person that you're going to be with for the whole of your life. Yes. So please, love yourself, look after yourself, and gosh, can I be so bold as to say, put yourself first?
What? Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, what an act of rebellion for high sensory women to put themselves first in the world, because those are not the messages we receive.
They're not. And particularly as women, but also I think all high sensory people out there are incredibly good at putting other people first.
Yes.
And we're not saying don't put other people first, but what we're saying is, make sure that you're figuring in that as well.
Yeah.
Because the more you put yourself at the bottom of the list, the more you are putting everybody else above yourself, the more your that spirit, that bit of you inside that wants to be nurtured, cared for, loved, is going to be feeling the consequences of you not putting yourself first. And that's
Yes.
health wise, it's health, emotional, spiritual, all of those things. And I had an emotion explosion. I think you had a health explosion, didn't you? Not
Yeah.
that I didn't have health problems and you didn't have the emotions going on. I mean, they're all interlinked, but that's largely on the outside what it would have looked like for both of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And you know, how radical, like you say, would it be for us to decide to live a life of self-love?
Yes. I want that for everyone, honestly.
I want that for everybody.
I really do. It would, here's one of my lofty things again, but that would change the world. If people truly loved themselves and truly, and I'm not talking about narcissism, I'm talking about true, really know and love themselves, and then walk around in a place, from that place of then being able to give that love to others, we would have a different world. We would.
I want that world.
I do too. That's why I love helping people learn to love themselves and celebrate themselves. And like, it's just everything to me. Yes.
It is. Me too. And you know, that's kind of why we're here doing this podcast as well, to share all these lofty ideas that we have, because, you know, us talking about them can help other people talk about them, and who knows where it might go.
That's right.
And you know, just going back to that self-love, you know, we both know what it's like to live with the alternative, which is you know, a life of self-hate and lack of self-worth and all those things. And I am not going back there.
Oh my gosh, no. That was such a dark place for me that I visited many times throughout my life, honestly. Just a devaluing of myself, I spoke so harshly to myself. My inner voice, was so mean. I had many, many different ones, and they were just so mean and cruel. And I'm not going back there either. And I want to help other people break free from that and learn to talk to themselves in that loving, nurturing way. That, I mean, I had to imagine, you know, that there's a little child in front of me, and what would I be saying to her right now? Because it certainly wouldn't be what's going on in my brain. What if it's my best friend next to me? What would I be saying to her? It's certainly not the words that are going on in my brain. You know, I had to develop this whole other language, internal, like, to facing inward. That's what I want for people, that we can love ourselves. Love ourselves. So much of the hurting that happens is because people are hurting.
Yeah.
They're hurting themselves, so they hurt others, you know?
Yeah. And yeah, just yes on that. And you know, I think there might be I'm sort of preempting maybe what some people might be thinking, sort of listening to what we're saying. I mean, hopefully there are people going, yes, that's what I want. But maybe there might be people listening who are thinking, oh yeah, well, that's all right for you, or something. You're we've done that work. Well, yeah, I mean, we have been in that dark place, and we have done the work to get us to where we are. I think you know, there is that tricky time in the middle where you decide to do the work for whatever reason. You know, whether you're forced to, you've got no other option, there's nothing to lose, and to beginning to see things change. There is that real time of real discomfort where you're like, what the hell am I doing? This is, I have no idea what I'm doing. What is the point? What are people going to think of me? What do I think of me? It's a time of real discomfort and pain sometimes. But as you've said before, and as I've quoted back to you before, Robbie, I'm going to do it again. This is now one of our mantras, I think. It's possible. It's doable. It's worth it.
Yeah. And I would say to all the listeners out there, you're worth it.
Yes.
You're worth it.
Yeah. I would also say that what other people think is none, what other people think about us is none of our business. We cannot control, it's not our and manage what other people think about us. It's not our place to do that.
That's right.
All we can do, and really what we should be focusing on, is what we think about ourselves, which goes back to what we're talking about: meeting our needs, self-love, and all the other.
Oh my gosh,
talking about.
So well said. I mean, I'm a recovering people pleaser, like many of us are.
Yeah.
So really shifting from, I mean, honestly, just recognizing, first of all, asking myself, what do I want? That was a shift.
Yeah.
Right. Instead of, and what do I think? How do I think about this? And how do I feel about this? And versus always checking externally. How do they feel about that? What do they think about? And what will they think about me? The amount of hours and energy I thought through multiple scenarios. Well, then what will this person think? And what will that person think? Oh my gosh, it's exhausting. Nice. And to your point, it's none of our business what other people think of us. What is our business is how we think and feel about ourselves. And so putting that energy there is a really good investment. It's a really good investment because, again, if you're feeling good about yourself, if you are loving yourself, then you are then able to give that out.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't agree more. And when I going back to the how do we figure out what we need? Well, I would always say that the start is awareness, being aware. So being aware that actually figuring out what you need is important, is something that you can do, is something that would be beneficial for you to do. So all the people listening and watching this, you've already raised your awareness. You are aware, because we're talking about how important it is. You are aware that it's a thing. I mean, you might not agree with us. You might not think it's a thing, but hopefully some of you will go, oh, okay, right. I want some of that. I want to figure out what I need. So awareness is definitely one thing. Like when I watched the Brené Brown vulnerability video, that really raised my awareness. And from there, and you can raise your awareness. You can listen to podcasts, you can read books, you can go to workshops, you can read blogs, there's so many ways. You can also get support from any number of people. Two very good coaches here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you can get support, but there are ways of raising your awareness. And the next step is, for me, this is how I work with clients, I say, is noticing. So once you know that actually maybe you're not great at knowing what you need, it's noticing maybe when when something happens. So for me, it was, I started noticing that actually I will ask everybody else in my house what they want, but I didn't ask myself. I'm like, interesting. I never noticed that. Or I will notice that I would notice that I felt like I couldn't say, I'm going to go and do this weekend, without feeling really guilty or feeling like I had to ask permission. And I've got a husband and sons. I'm the only, even the dog's male, so I'm the only female here. And recently I've had to really notice that actually all that, I love my family dearly, but it's a lot of male energy. And I've had to really notice that I need more female energy. I need to be around female energy more. That's just what I need. So I'm doing that more, because I've noticed that is something that I need. So be aware, and then start to notice, because your body will be giving you lots of signs if you can just tune in and notice them. Is there a pit in your stomach sometimes when you think about doing something, or is there an excitement in there? You know, these are all little signs about things that are good for you and not so good for you. Also, you know, if you go back and listen to our self-care episode, there are lots of things we talk about there. And is there anything that resonates with you in particular about things that would be good for you? Because we're not just talking in that episode about, I mean, I always say having a bubble bath. I mean, having a lovely bath is a really beautiful act of self-care if it's done consciously and with awareness.
Yeah.
Just going running a bath and getting in it and like sitting there going, right, okay, what next? Is not really going to do it. So yeah, so awareness, noticing, and then you can start making some changes.
That noticing part is so huge. I mean, and giving space for yourself to start noticing. Like, I think for me, I was surprised at the messages I started hearing. I was surprised at the things I started noticing about myself, like things that I thought I really enjoyed. Actually, I was feeling really anxious and exhausted. And so I'm like, oh, wait, do I really enjoy that? or was it what I thought I was supposed to enjoy?
Exactly. You know? And I think that's the point, isn't it? It can be things that you've sort of told yourself you enjoy, but because you've been doing them for years and you feel like you should be, but actually, do you really enjoy it?
Right. Right. And then looking for the things that, my word for it is life-giving. So where it feels like it boosts my energy, right? Or at least maintains it. Right. So noticing those things, and wow, I really related to what you were saying also about, you know, asking everyone in the house like what they needed, but not, or what they wanted, and not asking yourself. I had a lot of that where I started noticing, oh, wow, I'm really attuned to what my wife needs. Am I making as much space for my own needs? Am I making them just as important? Am that feeling guilty? Ooh, feeling guilty for asking for what you need, for just saying what you need, for not feeling like you have to ask permission. So relatable, Philippa. I went through all of that. And it'll still bubble up every now. Like, it'll still bubble up and I'll be like, oh gosh, dang it, there it is again. Like, it just, you know, it just seeped in. And that awareness, noticing, so important. So important. Yeah.
And I think we'll both attest to that when you do start to realize what you need and start asking for it, the world doesn't stop turning. And people, you know, the people around us don't think any worse of us. In fact, you know, I found, you know, I'm sure you did, that people are, oh, you know, great, thank goodness you know, you are doing, for me in our house, the minute I started doing more things that were for me, I became a lot easier to live with, a lot nicer to live with, and everybody else was benefiting as well. I'm skipping around the house and not, you know, but, you know, much better, and that makes it better for everybody.
100%. I found that to be true as well. Now, I will also say there are some people who don't care for that because and what I'm going to say around that is, then there's something unhealthy there in that relationship. That's my way of talking about that, because the people who, like you were talking about, your family, they're benefiting from you being in a happier, healthier place. Same in my household, right? My wife was just like, well, thank God you're taking what you need. She celebrated it. She's like, that's wonderful. Great. She felt like then she could do the same.
Yes.
Right. And so when both people are attending to their needs, it's a happier place. Right. Yeah. And if people are, I guess what I wanted to say is, if people are reacting poorly to that, that's about them and it's not about you.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, I know what you're saying. And, you know, I think people listening may well understand what you're saying and have experienced that, like we have. And that's, for me, that's information. You know, I always talk about, you know, gather information. That is definitely information for you to store until you know what you're going to do with that information. But in the meantime, please have our voices in your head, and don't stop working out what you need.
That's right. And if you think about it, like, let's say someone has given you, has not responded well to you doing what you need well. Still, I would say your voice is more important in this conversation than theirs about your own needs. Your voice is more important than anybody else's for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
No matter what.
I agree. So we've talked more about figuring out what we need, but also the consequences of not doing that. I mean, we've talked a little bit around that anyway, because the consequence for me was my emotional absolute meltdown. The consequence for you was your health. So I think what we're saying is that I think we can go through life for a certain length of time, and that will be different for everybody, not attending to our needs and not figuring out what we need. As HSPs, as well, it sort of seems to come bigger as well, because we're processing everything so much. We know inside that we are not attending to our needs, and eventually it will come out one way or another. It
sure will.
I think there are ways of perhaps trying to stop it coming out, and that's when we get into addiction and when we get into really unhealthy behaviors. But if we are not doing those sort of things, I mean, that is it coming out. That's one way that it's coming out. Another way is how it's happened to you and I. And I mean, just going back to the awareness piece, I think, we can go through life really not aware, not conscious of what is going on. I certainly was not conscious of the effect that my childhood had on me as an adult, and was still having the effect it was still having. I wasn't aware of my high sensitivity consciously. And but once I had increased my awareness and I'd shifted from that subconscious state to bringing it out into the open, and I was conscious about it became much more important for me to work out what I needed and pay much more attention to that, because I couldn't keep it down anymore, because I was conscious. So that's what happens. So actually, you kind of just got to do the work, and it will be so much. It'd be really beneficial in the long run.
Absolutely. And you and I talked a little bit ahead of time too. Not only will there be a decrease in those negative consequences for not doing it, but you'll see an increase in the positive consequences of doing it, like your own joy, your health, your happiness, relationships. For myself and my clients, it's figuring out what is their work to do in the world and doing that. And then that is like, it becomes these more positive feedback loops. And that's not to say that it's all perfect and we never have a wobble, because life is life, right? And we're all still on a journey. So please, listeners, don't ever think that Philip and I have it all figured out. But we're sharing what we do know. And we have way more resources now than we had before. And it makes those wobbles versus life explosions, right? And
right, you're absolutely right. And we know we've also got the experience that we know it will pass, and we know we will come out of it. So when we are having a bad patch, we know it will pass.
That's right. We have the resources, we have the tools.
We absolutely do. And you're so right. Thank you for reminding us of that actually it's not just the negative consequences of not doing it. It's like the absolute brilliance of what will come if we do it. And like you said, we're sharing our experience. experiences. And, you know, I would not have been able to be here with you recording this and putting this out into the world 6 years ago before my massive breakdown. You know,
Yes.
that would just, putting myself out there, it would just not have been anything that I could ever have told you would be possible, let alone be in my, like, what? Like, what are you talking about? I'm guessing the same for you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's no way I would have been able to be this this vulnerable, this real, this true. I mean, I didn't know this much about myself, so I didn't even have it to share.
Yes.
But then also the parts that I did know before, I was too scared to share.
Yeah.
So yeah, I couldn't have done it before either. I'm so grateful that we get to do it now.
I know, it's amazing, isn't it? And I think that's a really good place to end. Yeah, I really enjoyed recording this episode. I hope you've enjoyed listening. Any last words, or is that, you know, is that done for you, Robbie?
I think you've done it. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you for listening, for watching. You know, have we, you know, brought anything up for you? Have you got anything you want to tell us? Any questions, any thoughts? We would really love to hear from you. And we have been getting comments. We had a comment in to the episode that went, so episode 92 went out just before, is it 92 or 93? The episode that is the strength in sensitivity went out just before
93, I think.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we got the most amazing comment on Spotify, because on the Spotify episodes, there's a little button that you can press and leave us a comment. Unfortunately, we can't answer it on Spotify, but they just said how hands down they thought that was one of the best episodes they'd ever heard about high sensitivity. And, you know, that is just such amazing feedback. Thank you. Thank you to the person who left us that. Thank you. We are beyond like excited and pleased and thankful for that. And you know, but please, you know, you don't have to say nice things to us. We like to hear nice things, but if anybody has got any comments, thoughts, questions, please let us have them. We will collect a few and we'll probably do a question and answer session somewhere along the way. So that's it for this episode, and we'll be back again soon with another one. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Meeting of Minds podcast. You can find this podcast in all the usual places. Please tell your friends. Please subscribe. And if you have a moment, I'd be really grateful if you could rate and review, as it helps other people find us and helps me spread the messages of empowerment and positivity that I'm really passionate about. If you want to find out more about me, you can visit my website at www.safeandsupported.co.uk. Until next time, bye.